Most people start building an online presence with the goal of being seen, to grow an audience, promote your work, and build credibility. But over time, that purpose often evolves. And for those who continue showing up, an online presence can become something so much more meaningful. It becomes a way for you to clarify your values, and it also becomes a platform for you to advocate for things that truly matter. In this episode, I talked to Jennifer Van Alstyne to talk about what it truly means to create content that goes beyond visibility. Jennifer is the owner of the Academic Designer LLC, and she empowers professors to feel confident showing up online through website design, social media, and bio writing. And in this conversation, Jennifer and I talk about how ultimately your platform isn't just about you, but rather it can be a powerful tool for change if you choose to use it that way. This is a conversation about advocacy, community, and the courage it takes to keep showing up with your values at the center. Let's dive in. Every Edit's History interview runs about 60 minutes, but only 2/3 make it into the final cut. The rest, the 33% that I left behind, lives in my newsletter, Annotations. This newsletter is where I share the edits that got cut and also the strategies, the insights, and step-by-step tactics that emerged after the mic is turned off. Think of it as your companion guide to the episode. Richer, deeper, and more actionable. You can subscribe at cheryllau.com/email. Again, the link is cheryllau.com/email. Jennifer, when you were on the Side Hustle Club podcast about a few years ago, there was something you shared on that episode that still really sticks with me today. And you shared that at that point in your journey, you shared this particular post, and it was about how academics, your belief that academics should get paid for speaking. That post went viral, but maybe not all for the right reasons, because you got a lot of comments and many of them were hateful, some were inappropriate, some were even racist, and there were even fellow academics who didn't agree with your viewpoints. Why did you choose to continue showing up online after that incident? Because for a lot of people, it could be such a crippling experience.
That's a great question. There have been times in my life where I have made that conscious decision to stop showing up. An example I can think of is singing. I used to perform as a soloist so often that I don't think I could count. But at some point, I recognized that my relationship with the audience had shifted, and it no longer felt like something that I wanted to do in my body. Making that conscious decision to shift my appreciation of music and how I chose to enjoy music was really a step in better understanding myself. And I think that this situation with this viral post had a similar result. I mean, I got a lot of negativity. It's a very different kind of reaction from the audience, but the negativity that I experienced also revealed a significant amount of support. People came out of the woodworks to send me a DM, to text me, to call me. People really wanted to make sure that they knew, that I knew, rather, that they were a supporter, that they were someone who cared about me and who stood by me as an individual. And I think that that level of personalized care is not something that we anticipate when things go wrong. Oftentimes when things go wrong, it's like panic mode sets in, and there's so much negativity in terms of how we might feel about ourselves in reaction to that, that we might not stop and recognize some of the more positive aspects of the people that you love and care about and how they can show their care for you in a situation like that. Not that I'm advocating for you going viral for negative reactions, but I do encourage you to reach out to your support system and be more open about your experience. There were people who reached out who asked me how I was doing, and I didn't gloss over it and say, hey, I'm doing great. I said, hey, I've muted all of my posts because I'm so anxious. I feel a little bit unsafe, but I'm so grateful that you reached out. And that moment, I think it changed me in terms of how I approached the reaction of the unknown online. And I'm really glad that I went through that experience because it's helped me make better decisions, helps me prepare my clients to make better decisions. Yeah, it's changed a lot.
As you were sharing just now, I think one thing that that stood out to me and has always kind of stood out to me, to be honest, is this groundedness that you speak with. It's like sharing these lessons that you've learned along the way. You share it with such a not just confidence, but like a grounded confidence. And that's something that I've always really loved about you. But one thing, you know what? Now that we're speaking on this, I'm curious, Jennifer. So you've been building your online presence. You've been online for how many years now?
I'd say I've intentionally been building my online presence since about 2013, 2012. Maybe slightly before then, but not really in terms of being online, as in that is the reason for like this capacity building intentionality behind how I show up in the world.
I think, now that you've had over a decade of experience with building your online presence with thoughtfulness, I think it makes sense that now you can speak about these lessons and sometimes like hard lessons to learn with such like empathy and grace and also groundedness and confidence as well. But going back to the earlier times, whether it be the very beginning, like 2012, or maybe even near the beginning of you building your current business, as we were chatting before this recording, about, is there a piece of content from maybe your earlier entrepreneurial days that might reflect like a difference between how you approach content now? You actually did share a LinkedIn post, which I think kind of encapsulates that before and after that we were talking about as well. So I'm just gonna share my screen. Jennifer, could you give us a quick context into this post that you shared 6 years ago on LinkedIn?
Yeah, this is one of my very first LinkedIn posts ever. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I would change about it, but one of the things that drew me to this as a good example of how things have changed is that there's so much urgency in this, and like feeling like if you're the reader that like maybe you've missed out on something. And I don't lean into those kinds of emotions anymore. I feel like one of the things that's really shifted in before to after is how I want to connect with people. And when I was an early entrepreneur, I really felt like that sense of urgency or fear of missing out or dealing with the negative emotions, which is really effective for sales, was going to be an effective way for me to show up online. And I really had a lot of kind of like confliction with that. And I think that's reflected in my lack of making offers and my lack of storytelling in my earlier social media content about the Academic Designer LLC, my company, which helps professors with their online presence. That's really present in this post. I'm like, this is really happening. And people are like, what's happening? Like, what's happening? I'm like, higher ed world, you should check this out. And I'm like, check what out? What do I need to check out? Like, I'm reading the news every day. Like, I read all these articles. I get all of this information already. And you're telling me that I've missed something. And so then I'm telling people that they've missed my article. And I'm like, no, I don't like this feeling already. It's like this feeling of urgency, but also of, just like being unsure in myself and like unsure if like I need this information in order to be okay. I don't like that feeling when I read it. And so I don't want to have people experience that when they read what I share anymore either.
I really love that point you shared just now about how it's like you didn't like I guess the energy of the post. That wasn't your exact words, but like that was kind of the essence of what you were sharing. Sometimes our experience of that like cringe feeling is very different. For some people, it might be because they presented a version of themselves that they didn't quite like. For others, it might be because they were following a marketing tactic and now they're like, oh, that wasn't my voice at all. But one thing that I've that seems to be a common thread, and it does seem to show up in your post as well, is that there's a there's now, like, now with more maturity and experience, and we're able to look back at some of our past work, we're like, yeah, that wasn't exactly the fullest representation of maybe who I was back then, and definitely not who I am today. How, how did you develop and shift into the entrepreneur business owner that you are today, who again has that grounded confidence to you? Like, what was kind of the work that you had to do to really develop the character that that describes you today?
Um, I think my initial response to that is like trauma. Like going through some really difficult things like losing my parents, surviving domestic violence and abusive marriage, and really trying to make my way in the world as an individual who had to do that quite young. I was only 18 when I was like away at college alone and like really had no idea what my next steps were. I really developed resilience early then. And I think that when I started my business, it led into this feeling of I need to do this my way. Like I really need to do this in a way that feels safe, that honors my boundaries, that respects my time, and that is doing good in the world. And those early values about myself and how I was going to show up in my business helped me better shape and determine decision making along the way. So, like, was that resilience 100% there in the beginning? Definitely not. The confidence was maybe a little bit of a stretch. Like I presented that way, but like, was I sure that I could help people in the ways that I imagined? No. And I think that my lack of confidence resulted in me also not having a lot of clients when I started out. And so it really took practice and doing the work with people and making a difference in their lives for me to trust that confidence, and really recognize that the resilience isn't about how I was helping people. It was about me and how I make decisions.
Let me just absorb that for a second.
Mm.
I That was really profound. I was listening so attentively, I forgot my next question. We may or may not edit this part out, but I was literally just like, I was so engrossed with what you were sharing. I had a question I wanted to follow up with, and I lost it. Well, we'll see if this part makes it into the final recording. But when you first started showing up online, did you carry a lot of the weights that you felt from your personal life experiences, or were you able to more like mostly like separate the two?
I think when I was in my early days of creating an online presence, the goals were different, right? Like my goals were about sharing my poetry. And because of that, I shared a little bit more of my personality, what I was up to, what I was reading. And so I don't think that the personal fears that maybe I encountered when I became a business owner really existed at the start. Like, I was worried about my personal safety in general, but I was states away from my abusive ex, and so I didn't fear immediate danger when I was out in the poetry community. When I'm in the global community of online people who can be anywhere at any time, that kind of intentional online presence did bring up a lot of fear and anxiety, but not all at the same time. And over long periods of time, I felt none of that. And so I think that being someone who experienced negative things, those things that I lived through were so much harder than these after spells of worry, or fear. Like, that worry or fear or anxiety, or for some people, terror is something that like you may be quite used to in your body. And so when you recognize that, when your body recognizes that, sometimes that means that like you don't always do something about it, right? Like you don't always do something about it. And so making sure that my husband is aware of like things that he can do to help me calm down if I do seem really tense in my body, like giving me a shoulder massage makes a big difference in my life. Like having people in person recognize changes in my mood or changes in how I'm engaging can help me with how I show up online. And that's kind of one of the things that I would suggest, like being open with your friends, being open with your family. If you have these people who you can talk to, if something goes wrong, if something goes right, then the things that happen to you online don't exist in this kind of vacuum of you reacting to things privately. Sometimes when we share them with anyone, with whether it's entrepreneurial friends or friends that are in totally different fields, just living their own lives, we can still connect over an experience. We can still commiserate or relate to each other. And I don't think that we always think about sharing those experiences with people when we're online entrepreneurs, when we're showing up intentionally for our business. But I think that those moments are so special and can really create that sense of embodiedness, like that sense of like, okay, this is me as an individual, this is me in community, this is not me as this ethereal online presence that can get bombarded or can maybe experience something that is surprising or shocking. Yeah.
I would love to segue into exactly that actually. Jennifer, when was the first time you realized I do have community from the online space? Like, do you remember? Was it a particular person or particular experience? Like what was the first moment where you're like, "Ah, wow, I have found community, not just within my geographic vicinity, but like I found people who get me somewhere else in the world."
That's a great question. I was really hesitant to like make business owner friends when I started in a business. I think I was scared that people would see through me in the sense that like I wasn't doing as well as I'd hoped, or I didn't know much about business. I mean, like I was an English major, I studied literature and creative writing. Like I really didn't have a background that some other entrepreneurs have going in. And so I felt like my lack of knowledge is something that like in academia, like you don't want to show off. And so I was hesitant to be open to, I think, community that reached out to me at the start. Now, one of those people, Dr. Echo Rivera of More Than PowerPoint on YouTube, she did not really take no for an answer in like a beautiful way. And I would say like over a couple of years, she reached out more than once about, connecting in a deeper way, maybe meeting some of her other business friends. And I'm so glad that I said yes, because that is a group that still meets monthly. And we have supported each other for so many years now in beautiful ways. And I think that the hesitancy I had at the beginning, I think about like how wonderful it is that like that hesitancy existed because she practiced actually reaching out again when she wanted me to be better connected. And I practiced being more open again when I had said actually no the first time. So I think there's always opportunity for us to grow in our understanding and appreciation of community. It's okay if at this moment you're like, I'm full, I can't do any more. I have been there so many times in my life. And I've also gone back on that and been open with people about that capacity in the past and how I want to be better connected with them in the future if they're open to it too.
That's such a heartwarming story, and I really, I personally have thoroughly loved the people and the close connections I've made through this online space. Because for me, while I was still in school, when I went to graduate school after finishing university, I was still in that headspace of, okay, I'm just gonna get the best grades possible, finish this degree, and have a great career. So I was always so fixated on I'm just here to do my job, which is study, get good grades, and get into the next whatever is the next step. And I really I honestly missed out on making friends throughout my university and law school days. And it wasn't until I started my online presence around 2019, 2020, when I started actually trying to build a deeper relationship with people I thought were really interesting. And some of them even went to my wedding in 2022. And so, when I hear about your stories of how people have supported you during difficult times, or just that sense of community, I really resonate with that. And I really hope that a lot of listeners can think more about, especially if you're feeling loneliness in your life. I think now that we're not necessarily confined by our geographic location, there might be opportunity for you to find a genuine friendship with someone who you met online who might have similar interests or doing something similar as you. And you never know who will support you or who's secretly supporting you when you're going through something really difficult. So I just really, really loved you sharing your experiences, Jennifer. But actually, that leads me to another thought, which is friendships don't just come out of the blue per se, because like someone had to have seen something that you've put out on the internet to think, wow, I want to connect with Jennifer, or I want to talk to Jennifer, or I would love to be friends with Jennifer one day. So you must have put something out on the internet for others to want to be in your world. And so I think the thing that I'm curious about is, Jennifer, like, was there like a moment when you realized that you weren't just posting for yourself anymore, but now you were posting content that really resonated with others?
I never really got a lot of views on my blog posts. When I started the social academic blog, it was really so I could have resources to share with people if we were in conversation. If I was going to maybe present at a conference, I wanted to make sure I had something to share with people. And so starting these kind of blog articles felt like resource building for me. I didn't really think about it as a marketing technique. I think I should have at the time. I maybe could have made more money and had more clients. But what really resonated with me is that even though I had sometimes very few views. I remember one blog post I had like 15 views on it, but one of those people ended up creating a whole website based on my prompting them that it could be important and beneficial for their life. I mean, that is not like, oh yeah, I liked your post or I listened to your podcast episode. That's like, I gathered all of these materials from my life and learned how to use this new program and purchased something and then created the website and launched it. And now I'm actually sharing it with people. It's so many steps. It's so much impact that's like potentialized from just a few views that I really learned early on to let go of those numbers, to let go of the feeling of like I need to have a certain number of subscribers. I have very low subscribers. I have a lot of views on some of my posts. I have a lot of people who really take strong actions based on what I share, but it's not the kind of consistent viewership that some amazing blogs, podcasts, YouTube channels have. And it's not something that I'm chasing or need. What matters is that when people need the thing that I've created, they're able to find it easily, or I'm able to share it with them easily. That makes a huge difference for me. And it really makes a difference for the people I kind of created these resources for. Professors, researchers, grad students, their universities are adding it to their library as resources or to their, e-course. And it's something that grad students for years to come will be able to see. So I really let go of needing to know what the results are, what the engagement is with each individual thing I create. The creation of it is really what matters to me. If I find that spark and I find that this is something that could help people, I typically want to make it, which means I'm often having to choose between ideas because I have too many. And so I really need to be intentional about that kind of content bank that I have created in terms of what I'm curious about and what I'm interested in and how I want to help people.
I really resonate with that that relationship you have with your metric, like social media analytics, because I'm also someone who, arguably, in my opinion, I think I have relatively smaller audience size numbers, smaller
Yeah.
engagement numbers. But like I 97% of the time I don't have any thoughts or like attached feelings to those numbers. There is that 3%, okay, maybe 5% of the time when I'm like, like, does this make me look like an illegitimate podcaster? Like, yes, I do get like those thoughts, like maybe 5% of the time, but 95% of the time, it's like I'm just so happily posting and sharing and building that sure, like it would be nice if it gets more likes and views or whatever, but I I couldn't quite articulate why I don't feel that like attachment most of the time. There is the 5%, and I couldn't quite articulate it for a while, but I think hearing you share your point of view and experience, I'm wondering if it's um because now that you've for you you've built this hub, this educational resource hub, and I'm thinking, maybe that's why for me, because I feel like I built this body of work, and I feel like that already overcompensates for whatever low numbers I get, because if I only had like 5 pieces of content on the internet and they all get low views, I might feel like some type of way. But I built a substantial body of work, and I think that speaks for itself already. So I wonder if that might be a reason why I don't feel so attached to the numbers 95% of the time. But yeah, that's just making me percolate as you were sharing that.
Yeah, so I was recording a podcast episode for someone else last week, and they said something like, "You have an amazing YouTube channel," and in my head, I was like, "Wait, me?" I had that reaction that was like, there's so many reasons why I could argue against that statement, right? There's so many reasons why I could potentially, like, as someone who understands the huge potential of numbers of YouTube channels, like, understands, like, where my channel might fit in overall in the spectrum. But I didn't dwell on that. I didn't dwell on that feeling. Like, I don't think about it ever. I don't like judge my YouTube channel like good or bad in any capacity. And so it was actually someone else saying something to me that sparked a reaction, and wasn't really a negative one. It was just momentary. But that's another thing that I think about. Like, when you're starting out as an entrepreneur or a podcaster, other people have their own understanding of what those numbers are or what they mean. And so, like, if you get 20 views on a video, and like someone else is like, "Oh, you only got 20 views. That sucks." Like, their feelings and tone and emotions and understanding of what that means really has potential to affect us and how we're thinking about it in the moment about ourselves or about our own content. And so I just wanted to express that, like, oftentimes those moments are fleeting. Like, we can hear that information, and there's potential to let it go. There's potential to move forward and, like, not let negative feedback or surprising feedback or unwelcome feedback bother us. But also there's potential to grow from it. And so learning the difference, learning, what works for you in terms of criticism and feedback from the public, from your audience, from your friends and family, that can be helpful too. And I think I developed some resiliency with that when I was a creative writer that works well in my business now.
So actually, you know what? On that note, Jennifer, I'm so curious because you work with a lot of folks, a lot of academics on building their online presence, on creating a building their online presence through a website, for example. Have anything changed for you or your clients or your community in the recent years because of AI?
That's a great question. Some of my clients are actually AI researchers, and so I feel like they've worked on some of the biggest AIs out there. And so when I think about how AI is impacting my business, I find that it's really just helping people better understand their capacity for online presence when it comes to their own research or teaching. For professors and researchers who want to build an academic website, I mean, like, yeah, people are still coming and visiting my How to Build an Academic Website website post. It's great. And I update it over the years, so it's like super helpful for people. But like there's so much more information that someone might need depending on which direction they want to go, or if they want step by step. And they can go to many other resources online, or they can go to ChatGPT and it will walk them through how to do things step by step. I don't need to do that anymore. And so I think that there is a little bit of a relief in the sense that I've created all these resources ChatGPT is reading, and it's going to give people answers based on the things that I've already created for them. It's also going to help serve me up as a potential resource for them if they want done for you support. And I have had sales calls recently that have said, ChatGPT said that you'd be a good person to work with, so that's why I'm here. Being able to get that feedback, though, doesn't necessarily mean that I use AI in my practices. So much of my work is really about conversation and about getting to know professors' feelings, emotions, values, their mission, the reasons why they do the research and teaching that they do. And that's not something that AI can tell me, right? It's something that they need to be able to articulate themselves. And if they can't, we need to understand if that's important to actually be a part of their online presence. And so I don't think that the process of how I work together with professors will ever change, or like the need for it will be eliminated because of AI. But I do think that the tools that AI has really allowed people to have at their fingertips makes it easier for me to do my work because they can learn a little bit more on their own, because they can have that kind of support in their own language, at their own convenience, in a time frame that works for them. I do like that. Yeah.
I want to connect this to an earlier conversation we had on this podcast, which is like this tension between visibility and safety. Because one thing that I was really hesitant about even making a chat. So for context, I only tried ChatGPT for the very first time around September, October 2024, which is later than a lot of folks I know. So it took me maybe a year or so before I even like opened it up on my computer, because I just had a lot of thoughts about, I don't know if it's safe. I did not do my research, so I just operating out of the assumption that it's very unsafe, but I'm sure there is some safety concerns still. But Jennifer, how do you navigate this tension between visibility and safety with your online presence and things that you're building?
It's actually something that I've used recently as a safety tool, in the sense that I want to understand what ChatGPT or Gemini or another AI understands about the person that I am creating a website for, or supporting strategically with their online presence. What does ChatGPT know about me, Jennifer Van Alstyne? The nice thing is that it knows a lot of things that I've created, a lot of things that I've put out there, or places where I've appeared online. I like that my online presence, as AI understands it, is largely things that are shaped by my voice. But for most people, if you haven't been in all of those places online, if you haven't been as intentional about sharing a variety of ways of who you are, ChatGPT may be unsure. It may have incorrect information. It may have too much information, which is the case of someone who I was working with recently. We recognized that ChatGPT had a lot of information, personal information about their location and other information about themselves that maybe they really didn't want out there. And so when you think about like, what does Google, what does this search engine, what does this AI understand about me? Knowing that, being able to see the sources that it's pulling up for that information may be able to help you remove it, or be better aware of how you want to shape your online presence moving forward. So I don't necessarily recommend you use AI if you have like reasons against it just for this purpose. But as someone who feels safer with more information, I found that the process of doing it for myself was beneficial. And I am going to prefer to do it for my clients moving forward so they can have a better understanding of how they're showing up online too. So that doesn't take very long. It's, a process that, like, maybe you can add into your agenda with ease, but it can help you feel a little bit safer to be aware of how things show up online. And even though we're talking about AI, one caveat about Google search and other search engines is that every year, I mean, like every day, but like maybe once a year, you add it to your calendar to go in and actually do a full search of your online presence history again. I was updating a client's website just last week and realized that there were like actually hundreds of new listings that were older that had recently appeared. And so that sometimes has information that you do or don't want out there. And so being aware of what's out there about you, there are things that you can do to have some agency in that process.
And what I'm gleaning away from what you shared is that, as our platforms or impact continue to grow, because many of us are using the online space and tools to grow our impact and platform, I think it's important to consider, are there parts of ourselves, our lives, that we want to be maybe a bit more protective over, and things that we may not want to share as openly anymore, and that there is value in keeping some things for ourselves and not feeling like we have to share everything about ourselves on the internet. So, Jennifer, as we start to near the end of the conversation for today, I want to ask you one more question, which is, how has visibility, how has building an online presence, how has even advocating for things that you care about, how did your relationship with these things, did any of these things change its meaning to you compared to when you first started showing up? Has your work taken on a different meaning?
I think that my work is less focused on product, which is like the website itself, and it's actually more focused on how people feel when they show up online. And that's based on how things have shifted and how I feel when I show up online. When I share online, I reach the right people. Like, I reach people who care about what I'm saying and who want to connect with it or engage with it in deeper ways. Like, I reach people who will go have conversations about these things with other people and share it. Like, I don't think I imagined that when I was an early business owner. I don't think I imagined that my words could be as powerful in this sense, the way I understood that my words as a poet could connect with people emotionally. I didn't recognize the potential of my words. And so I think that one of the things that's really shifted is my openness for people to have their own reaction, positive or negative, and really recognizing that, like, I don't necessarily have to be a part of that next step for them. Like, I don't need to work with someone, or they don't need to come back to my website for that moment of transformation or change to impact their life. And I have to be open for them to have that experience, but also open for myself, as someone who's maybe uncomfortable with audience, to continue to share, knowing that I don't necessarily have control over the impact of those words. As a creative writer, I think that shaping the emotional journey of our reader is important. And so I think that I try to do that with posts, but letting go of that feeling of like, oh, you need to like, or you need to engage, or you need to feel this way, or you need to take this action. Letting go of that is beautiful and really lets me show up as myself on social media and do things that really feel natural and feel like it's helpful for people. I didn't anticipate that was possible early on.
I'm so happy to hear that you've had such a lovely experience overall.
Yeah,
And I'm so
100%.
glad we connected because of
Me
the internet.
too.
What? That's amazing.
Exactly. Our friendship is one of the things that makes me believe that online friends are real friends, but also that online friends really have the potential to connect with you in deep ways, in unexpected ways. And I don't think that at the start of my business, I was open to any of that. And I'm so glad that by the time we met, I was.
Yeah, and we met twice in person. Oh my gosh. And there's more. There's definitely more opportunities to meet up.
100%.
We're just separated by a few oceans, but we'll figure it out. Amazing. So, Jennifer, where can people find you and how can they work with you?
You can connect with me at theacademicdesigner.com, where you'll find my blog, links to my podcast, and socials. I'm on a bunch of social media platforms at Higher Ed PR and at Jennifer Van Alstyne. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Cheryl.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to everyone listening, thank you so much as always for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. In this conversation with Jennifer, one of the key topics was community. So here's what I'm thinking. In the online space, building community has become this sort of phrase, and we hear it tied to marketing, audience growth, and even revenue models, right? And people talk about community as something to own, right? Like as a way to gain independence from social media algorithms or even increase your conversions over time. And while those ideas are not inherently wrong, that's not how I personally define community. To me, a true community begins with shared values. So whether it's a small group of entrepreneurs who meet on a monthly basis to share their challenges, or thousands of people who follow a podcaster because they resonate with the ideas that that podcaster shares, what unites them is not the platform, but the principles they hold in common. And the way I see it is that community can take many forms. Maybe it looks like a Slack group or a live event or even a one-way connection through a podcast. But regardless of the structure, community is for when people see a message that reflects what they care about and they choose to gather around it. If you're someone who wants to build community, a meaningful one, I should say, here's how I would personally go about it. First, you need to be vocal about your values. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? And are you communicating those beliefs consistently in your content, your messaging, and your interactions with other people? Second, understand that leadership, right, is foundational to building community. But leadership doesn't require you to be the loudest or the most confident or the most polished person in the room. It just means that you're willing to go first and you're willing to embody what you believe in. And third, your body of work should reflect the culture that you're trying to build. And the more consistently you model that culture that you want, the more clearly that others will see what your community stands for. And number 4, let your people see themselves in your work. Share the stories, reflections, experiences that your people can relate to, even if they didn't go through the exact same things, right? It's about creating an atmosphere of recognition that makes people think, oh, this space was made for someone like me. So those are 4 things that I would think would be profoundly helpful for building a community. And on top of that, I think it's also important to remember that the size of your community is not what makes a community impactful or meaningful. In fact, some of the most meaningful experiences that I've had come from very intimate or even small groups where people showed up fully and consistently and vulnerably, right? A community of 4 or 5 people who deeply trust one another can be more impactful than a passive following of thousands of people. So that's why I sincerely invite all of us to resist this urge to treat your community like something you own, because your audience is not like this email list to manage. It's not a marketing funnel, but it really is a living, breathing ecosystem of people who are choosing to walk alongside you because they see something in your work that reflects something in themselves. So if you want to be building community, begin by leading. Be clear about what you believe in and reflect those beliefs in the way you create, and take responsibility for the culture that you're building. Because whether you're intentional about it or not, your content is shaping that community and culture already. Sounds good? Awesome. Let's get to work. If you enjoyed what you heard today, well, there's more where that came from. For each episode of Edit's History, I send the bonus strategies, insights, and frameworks straight into your inbox via the Annotations newsletter. This is the companion guide to each episode, and it is designed to deepen your thinking and help you take action. Join the newsletter at CherylLao.com/email. Again, that is CherylLao.com/email.